Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill. Got another video for you today. I wanted to get this out before the DLC came out just so that A, you've got something to watch while you have the downtime tomorrow. And I didn't want this video to get lost in kind of the well, it's probably going to get lost anyway in the shuffle of the new DLC videos, but it'll probably be at least like a day before I start uploading those, unless it's the Elite Raids day one. But straight to the point, I'm in my base because this is where I have serious conversations with you guys, and we got a serious conversation today. I recently saw a thread on the forums talking about the Amulet of Rao, and that's like the new thing to do for controllers. And there are some dangerous myths and misconceptions being spread in that thread. So I thought I had to nip this in the bud real quick before someone sees it and makes a very wrong decision for what they should do as a controller. So once again, I went ahead and leveled up the Amulet of Rao to 80, wasting 40,000 experience. So now I've got to stick this until double weekend. But whatever, it was like 50 mil or something like that. So we got this Amulet of Rao to 80. And people are saying in that thread that they've dropped the Soul Cloak. So they're running the Parasite Power Harness and the Amulet of Rao. Which is definitely not what you want to do. And we're going to kind of cover it in this video. And I've done all the testing and everything. So essentially, the Amulet of Rao, your controller debuffs are 20, 30, or 40% stronger and hit up to 1, 2, or 4 additional enemies near your target. That's what it does. And it gives you, what is it, bit power and health. In the end, it's going to be, what, 5% Vit, 3% health. Is that the same as the Parasite Harness? Yeah. Yeah, 5, 3. Yeah, so it's got the exact same base stats all on the levels as the Parasite Power Harness. So it's not like where like the Soul Artifact actually gave you more might than the Might Artifact. So it was like, okay, it made more sense to run this. No, the exact same base stats between the Amulet and the Parasite Power Harness. So it's not like you get better stats by maxing this one out compared to the other. In terms of controller debuffs, this game has never been about controller debuffs, really ever. There's the odd instances over the course of this game where debuffs did matter, like you did need to heal one, you did need to attack one, and that's more case just if it was an NPC that buffed themselves, like when we see the green target. Very similar was in Nexus, like the robot drones. If you didn't keep a debuff on them, they kind of semi-enraged, and then they would hit harder. You always had to keep the attack debuff on them, stuff like that. So instances like that is where you needed debuffs, but it was very specific instances, and they've definitely moved away from that. What they've shifted into is more mechanics. So like when you look at Ultimate Soldier, he has obviously a heal mechanic, but it's a mechanic. It has nothing to do with the debuff. If you don't break that shield, it doesn't matter if there's a debuff on it or not, he's going to heal. So it doesn't impact it either way. The attack debuff, yeah, that's helpful, but even in SM, like it really wasn't going to make or break you. Like if the ad's hitting you for 60k, the 10% attack debuff isn't going to save you anyway. It's not going to be like make or break your death by having the attack debuff. It was just something to run. Same thing with the defense debuff. The defense debuff, yes, it was helpful, and yes, it kind of sped up things, but it wasn't like absolutely necessary. It was just something that you had to debuff. You might as well, so do it. That changed a little bit once we got the ability mod bonuses, where if you're wearing 6 pieces, you get plus 2% critical for 15 seconds and it stacks. So basically, you got an extra 6% critical power magnitude, which was helpful. You want more crits for yourself. That's always going to be helpful. And then that was magnified even more when we got the Parasite Power Harness, which is basically hitting an enemy with a controller debuff grants the entire group power equal to 8% of your Vit. And precision as well. So that was helpful because if you stacked Vit, you gave the power. You didn't give them power. You increased their power pool. It was basically like having another Omega or whatever. Like it increased their maximum power pool by 8% of your Vit. So it's still helpful. Like you're helping the group. They have more power to use because you're using your debuffs. So this is why I developed that rotation that I do now, which is pretty much spamming the debuffs off cooldown, because of course you don't need to. They're going to last for 10 seconds, whatever. So you don't need to keep using them on cooldown. I do that because I want to feed the Soul Cloak, which is going to increase my supercharge generator. So every power I hit, every supercharge generator I hit, every debuff I hit is going to increase my supercharge more. That's what the meta is. It is earning your supercharge as fast and as frequently as you can. It has nothing to do with debuffs. Absolutely nothing. Don't get caught up in like they're stronger 20, 30, 40. I'll show that why it means absolutely jack in this testing. And when it hits enemies, 1, 2, or 4, there's also an ability mod that did that too. Instead of the debuff efficiency, it was like debuff master, I think it was, where it had a chance to hit other targets. Now, if I'm in my rotation, like you've seen in every controller video I've done for the past like 6 months, I'm constantly using my debuffs when they're on cooldown. So I can easily just tab targets and keep everything debuffed. I don't need an artifact that's going to set up 4 debuffs for me by myself, because I can do that no issue. It's not like I'm going to stop using debuffs. So, and neither would you. Like, if you want to earn your supercharge, then you still have to use your debuffs to get the supercharge generation from using those powers, and you've got the power pool to pull it off. So why do you need to hit another 4 additional targets? Just debuff those 4 enemies. So yes, it's more efficient, obviously, to debuff mass things, but at the same time, you can accomplish the same thing by running the Soul Cloak and the Power Harness as you could the Amulet of Rao in terms of debuffs. You just kind of switch targets or tab targets. And that goes ultimately back to what I said before, where there's hardly any NPCs that actually need debuffs. The attack debuff is not, even if the attack debuff is 40% stronger, which doesn't add up to anything, it's only like, 14% or whatever. That 40% stronger attack debuff is not going to save you from death. If a flamethrower NPC in Hive in the new test server DLC, if that's ticking you for 13k, you're still going to die, even though if it's got an attack debuff. You might die a fraction of a second less, but you're still going to need heals. The only NPC in this DLC that needs a debuff is the medic, and there's only one of them. So if you use the Amulet of Rao and fire debuff at the medic, and you heal debuff like 6 targets around it, or 4 targets, 2 targets, whatever, that was pointless. They don't need heal debuffs. Only the medic does. There used to be 2 medics. Now they changed that. There was only 1. So it's just, don't get caught up in what the debuffs mean. You don't need them. Your goal should be, and what my goal is as a controller, is I want to provide the most power I can to the group. I'm not trying to say that if there's some DPS or healer just spamming powers or whatever, I have no right as a controller to say, oh, you don't get that power because you're not good enough, or you're not using your a rotation, or your DPS that's spamming power is trying to top the scoreboard. Like, you don't deserve power, so I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not going to let anyone's playstyle be affected by my power regeneration. Doesn't matter who the group is or what the content we're doing. I'm going to use as much of my ability as I can to provide as much power to the group. And that's what this rotation does, using the Power Ascent Harness and the Scrap of the Soul Cloak. I max out the extended power pool. I max out to them with Power Ascent Power Harness, and then I earn all my supercharges much quicker, and my cooldowns are reduced. So I go from like a 30-second cooldown all the way down to like a 24-second cooldown, as long as you're using as long as your munitions light quantum, like as long as you're not mental and gadgets, because they're the 60-second ones. So I get to use my supercharges faster, and I earn them quicker and more frequently. Supercharges not only provide the most power to the group, but also it's a 100% absorption shield. And you saw in my other previous videos with quantum, I use my shields to protect the entire group through the TTB tentacle phases. I had a shield up on every phase. You can't do that without the Soul Cloak. And that was even 120 back then. That wasn't even 160. So there is way, way, way more positives to running the Soul Cloak and earning supercharges and using them as frequently, as often as I do, hitting them on cooldown. Because if I use a supercharge, they're like, oh, don't waste your supercharge because the group may need it later. Well, I'm going to get the supercharge in another 30 seconds. So it's like, well, I perpetually am earning supercharges. So it really doesn't matter about saving supercharges for that, like, oh shit moment or something in a raid. I can use them every 30 seconds. So every 30 seconds, the group gets a shield, the healer can relax, the tank has a bit more absorption. If there's splash damage, if there's AoE environmental damage, I am taking that pressure off the group by earning my supercharges the way I do. And, those fools on the forums that, those controllers saying, "Oh, I've been a controller for 7 years in this game. Listen to me." No, because they have no idea about the bigger picture of things and what the group and content actually needs. Don't run the Amulet of Rao, and you'll see in the testing that follows. Okay, so for this test, it was easier to show what the actual debuffs meant in a duel. So I dueled someone with the Amulet of Rao equipped, and I went over to their current debuffs to show that the Amulet of Rao, when it was equipped, they're getting, because it's at 80, it's getting a 12% defense for 12 seconds. So what that means is that actually with the debuffs is basically the base debuffs are 10% for defense and attack, 25% for heal. So you're basically taking that 10% times whatever your Amulet of Rao is at, so 10% times 20%, and then you're adding in the 10% to get 12. So that's what it means by the 12 seconds. I'm assuming it's going to last for 13 seconds and 14 seconds for the other values, except the heal debuff. It's not going to last that long. So I'm not exactly sure on the timing compared to the other levels, but this is what it actually means by stronger debuffs. Okay, so in terms of the threat that I was talking about, calling on controllers, Amulet of Rao versus Parasite Power Harness, and that dangerous myth there is if we scroll down to the comment here, on a debuff target, my PCDL hit upwards of 43k plus on crits. It usually is between 36 to 39 normally. That's a 20% increase. Plus, it was stated during the stats revamp testing that debuff potency was increased to 20%. That's wrong on both fronts. Stats revamp had nothing to do with debuffs. The attack and defense debuff are still at 10% base, and the healing's at 25. Now, in terms of the dangerous myth, this is very dangerous to start spreading that misinformation that the Amulet of Rao makes your damages and your powers hit harder. So basically what I did was set up the test that you just saw, a brief little clip of as I sped it up because you don't need to see it. I'm in Area 51. I've got no escalating might. I've got no max damage. I've got no might artifact, so there's nothing impacting my damage. I'm using Time Shift, which sets up the stabilized PI, and I'm using Einstein Ray, which is the graviton charge PI, so there's no PIs to worry about in terms of affecting my damage. I did 30 hits on both tests. One test was 30 hits when it's debuffed at 10%, and the other one's 30 hits debuffed when he's at 12%. So obviously I should see a 20% increase or a large increase on the debuff. And basically the numbers are pretty much the exact same. The difference was 1.12%, which is absolutely nothing. The standard deviation of damage ranges are well within that number. As you can see, all the numbers are the same: 79.85, 77.67, 76, 78, 78.44, 82.58, 81, 81, 87, 93, 96, 76, 78. All the numbers are almost dead similar. The difference is, what's that? It's not even 100 damage. What is that? I can't do math all of a sudden on the top of my head. 78, 91. So 88. It's the average damage difference was 88 from No Amulet of Rao to the Amulet of Rao. That's not enough to go, spreading grandiose claims that, oh, everyone needs to run the Amulet of Rao because your attacks are going to higher. No, that's not how that works. How it works is the easiest way to explain this, because it's a bit convoluted, is think of it like in terms of PvP. So if you defense debuff someone in PvP, they lose toughness. Think that's the easiest way to explain it. If you hit someone for 1,000 and their defense debuffed in PvP, it's not like you're doing 1,500 or 1,800 damage. Because they're reduced toughness, they have less protection from that 1,000 damage. They're taking more damage. That 1,000 damage is hurting them more because they have less toughness. The same thing for PvE content, armor penetration and damage mitigation. So if your attack did 2,000 damage to the boss, that 2,000 damage is hurting the boss more because he has less defense. So yes, in the grand scheme of things, the bosses will die a little bit, like in the end, seconds faster, because if your Amulet of Rao is at 160, that's 14% defense mitigation compared to 10%. But if you've got DPS that are worth anything, that 4% will equate to nothing. So it's really 700,000 XP is worth 14% versus 10. No, it's not, considering how much your power regeneration would be nerfed by running that. So there's absolutely no damage increase difference. 1%. A 1% difference between damage, and that's nothing. That's all within the standard deviation of the damage ranges, the minimum to the maximum damage range for Einstein Ray. Okay, with this part of the test, this is going to be with the Amulet of Rao, so I don't have the Scrap of the Soul Cloak on. Right now, I'm almost going to hit 100% supercharge, or 10,000 supercharge to use Oblivion. That's why I'm just at that time. And I'm going to show how much the extended supercharge actually means compared to using no Scrap of the Soul Cloak to using it. It'll probably be just a sec before we get Oblivion. Probably one more supercharge generator. Oh, one more. Okay, so now I've earned Oblivion. So that bar is, 10,000 supercharge. And it's almost midway through the 0, or just past the 0 in my 240 CR. So that's what your bar looks like when you have 10,000% supercharge. Okay, so now it's the same test. I am now wearing the Scrap of the Soul Cloak instead of the Amulet of Rao. And look, my Oblivion is almost going to be maxed out, and I'm not even close to the end of my supercharge bar. So it's probably going to be like 1 or 2 supercharge generators, probably one more after this. Okay, so now I have 10,000 super. Now compare that to the Amulet of Rao, and I have like another, pretty much an inch. I have an inch more super that I can get with Scrap the Soul Cloak towards another supercharge. So that's like probably halfway, 3/4 to another 50% super, just with the Scrap the Soul Cloak, the difference that makes. And people want to give that up.